Hey, Don.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to chat a little bit with you.
Me too.
Before we get started though, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dawn 𝘍𝙧𝙚. I'm a realtor in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I've been in real estate since 2015, so just past the 7-year mark.
Oof.
Yeah, very exciting. I have 2 little boys and a husband, and I play in a bagpipe band. That's
All
the
right.
closest.
How do you get into a bagpipe band?
Yeah, so I'm a drummer. I can't take credit for playing the bagpipes. That's they're as hard as they look. But I started playing in a bagpipe band in cadets as like a young child, and I've just continued to do it. I just love it. So that's my weird fact.
Hey, I love it. It's a good weird fact. How did you get into real estate then?
So I was working in the automotive industry back in 2014, and I had what I thought was my dream job at the time. And my boss, he was, a little bit demanding, but so be it. He wanted me to work on Sunday nights. And I was like, you know what? I have a family. I'm not going to work on Sunday nights, which is really funny because obviously now as a realtor, I work every day. But
details.
Exactly. It was one of those things that it was just like, you know what, if somebody is going to be this demanding of me, I want it to be kind of on my own terms. So I quit that job with nothing else lined up. It was just making me miserable. It was very scary. Yeah. Yeah. And it's weird because real estate was always in the back of my mind as something that I would have liked to do for a job. My mom and dad moved around a lot growing up. My dad was in the military. And so I'd been exposed to a lot of different real estate advisors. And they'd actually just recently sold their house in BC with an agent there that just, did not do the greatest job. And there was so many times throughout that transaction that I was just like, okay, this is interesting. I feel like if I did this job, I might do it a little bit differently. So when I quit and I didn't have anything else lined up, I kind of came back, and it was like something that was just like, okay, if I don't do this now, I feel like I'm never going to do it. So I signed up, I got my license. It was funny actually, because I found this test online, and it was about like, oh, would you be a good realtor? Whatever,
like a personality test or something. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So I took the personality test, and I expected at the end, it would be like, yes, be a realtor, or no, you would be terrible. Find something else. Took the whole test. And at the end, there was no sort of like conclusion to it. And then a couple of days later,
you didn't pay for this, did you? You didn't pay for the test. Okay, good.
Free test. But a couple of days later, I got a call from a broker and of a Royal LePage branch here in Calgary. And she'd asked me to come in and meet with her. And I was like, oh, okay, sure.
Did you know this broker, or how did that
come about? I didn't know her. Turns out it was affiliated with this test. So that was kind of their like recruiting test.
Clever.
And so, and it's very clever, actually. I went in to meet her, and she was just wonderful. And so we had such a good conversation. And then it was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go get my license. And I did that. And when I was done, I went straight back there, and I started working as one of her agents immediately, because she was just so wonderful. And yeah, so it took me a little bit longer than I'd hoped to do the course. I took a year to get it done. And in that time, I got married and did all that kind of fun stuff.
Life happened,
Just all the life things. Yep. And then, I started in July of 2015.
Holy cow. Yeah. So that's a long time, right? Lots can happen in 7 years. So I'm really curious. And the whole premise of this podcast, as you know, is, what's changing? What's staying the same? Like, so in your opinion, I mean, 7 years is a long time, and technology, and there's been so many things, so many disruptors. In your opinion, what's changed the most?
I feel like, in my mind, it just comes to it as social media, because when I first started, I had an Instagram account, and I started on social media right away, but it was very different in the sense that back then, obviously it was a picture-based platform and you could just post your just sold and you're just listed and that kind of stuff.
Do you think people do you think like clients, prospective clients, and the general population, do you think people like seeing just sold, just listed, or like, what's your real thoughts on that?
So I go back and forth because sometimes it does feel like very braggadocious and like
braggadocious, good word. I'm going to Urban Dictionary that later, but
right. But yeah, sometimes it does feel that way. And it kind of makes me feel a little insecure about doing those posts. However, when I sell a home for my clients, and now I think because I've been doing them for quite some time, they look forward to it.
So they are like your clients that you're selling for.
They get excited to see like that sold and they're like, oh yes, that's our house, So I even have people that message me after the transaction, and unfortunately I'm not as quick as I would like to be with getting those up. And so sometimes it's a couple days and they're like, hey, is our just sold coming out soon? And they're looking forward to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes, as much as it's tricky, because is it just for me or is it just for them? I don't know, but I know that they like doing it. And at the end of the day, my main priority in this business is always my clients. And if that's something that they like seeing and they get excited for, then part of me is kind of like, you know what, if other people don't like it, I'm not made for everybody. And so if you don't like me because I put a just sold or just listed post up, well, we're probably not a good fit anyways. And so
I love that. I love that because it's kind of like dating. Like I always use the dating analogy, right? Like it's not going to be right for everyone. And the other thing I like to say is when you see something online, it may not be like that in real life, just like online dating, right? Like there's filters, folks. That right out may or may not be true. That guy is not 6'3", I'll tell you that. So it's interesting. It's a good perspective.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right about that too, right? Is that it's not everything is what it seems, for sure. And I have that conversation with my clients a lot about, this is relationship based and it needs to be a good fit, because you need to feel comfortable kind of bringing up any possible concerns or anything you need as the client. You want to feel comfortable being able to ask that of your agent. And so you're right. It's very relationship based. And we're just all kind of trying to do what their expectations are. So yeah.
I've noticed you've increased your video. Is that part of the whole social media transition that you were talking about? How it was more photo based and now it's evolving?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I know back then, and I don't really know if this has to do with a follower count mentality, but I feel like social media is definitely becoming more of a search engine aspect versus back then. I don't feel like you were going to Instagram to find your realtor. And now I think there's a good possibility that is how you get, might be, how you get connected with your agent. Right. So I feel like that's a big change in it as well, despite the fact that it was just, photos, static photos, and here's this. We're evolving and video does do that, right? I feel like video, you watch somebody on stories enough, or you watch their videos that they put out. And when you talk to them face to face, you're kind of already like, oh, I feel like I know you.
Yeah. You get a feel for them. Hey.
Totally. So, for me, I'm trying to put myself out there more and be on video. It's still super anxiety inducing, self-conscious.
I know. I have PTSD. I've tried it a couple of times. I'm like, okay, you know what? This is not for me.
It's hard, right? And you just you just have to submit and then kind of walk away from your phone sometimes, because the reality is that, well, I mean, not every video is going to do great, and that's okay. Right. And maybe none of them do great until, you've been doing it for a little while. And so I feel like, I feel like you just have to put yourself out there and keep going. But yes, that is a big part of why I have more of a video presence now, just because I'm trying to kind of build that connection with people prior to them getting to know me. And also, like you said about relationships, I want them to have an idea of who I'm like, so we can tell, are we going to be a good fit or are we not? I don't want to waste a lot of time.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't want to waste yours, and you don't want to waste mine either. Right. Like, let's all just work with somebody that is a good fit for us.
And I was just going to say, there will be somebody else that is a way better fit. If we're not a good fit, I may know somebody that can help you, or you'll just haphazardly stumble upon them, and that's perfect too.
Totally. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
No, that's cool. And I'm really excited about your YouTube channel.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just in its early stages. I'm very excited. I've kind of started with YouTube shorts. The amount of information on the internet is overwhelming in terms of you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And as a realtor, I think a big difference too is from getting into the industry. I think you think your job is like selling homes and that's essentially it. And I just posted my first video where it's a property tour. And in the beginning, I do a bit of an intro. And I was so nervous to do this intro. And my husband was like, it's so weird that that's your job. Like you have to now be on video. And I'm like, it is weird because the premise of my job is helping people buy and sell houses. But now it also feels like it's also, being in front of a camera and having these skills that I didn't typically have. You know what I mean? They're not, they're not natural skills for me by any means. But yeah, so it's all kind of a part of, I guess, building this brand and trying to have that exposure on all aspects.
I think you just hit like a really interesting point is you're not just selling real estate though. And you're not just a realtor, right? You're building a brand. There's so much more to it. I actually feel like we could go on and on about this. I think as much as people think they understand real estate and the transactions and the relationships with an agent, nobody knows shit, like I'm always, and frankly, nor did I, when I bought my first condo, like I didn't understand how fees work. I didn't understand all the fees too, that the agents pay. I didn't understand that they're in charge of their own marketing and they're essentially their own assistant and the coordination and all they need an accountant, like all of the, like you're a small business. It's not just done selling some homes. There's a lot more to it. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, there really is. And I think that's why sometimes, the age-old debate of like, do realtors make too much money, right?
Oh God.
It's like, you really want to get into it and break it down. Like how many houses do I need to sell in a year just to, first of all, break even?
Yeah.
Right. Let alone the fact that like you pay splits off of all of that. Like you said, business expenses, there's so much that go into it. And then the amount of time that we put in and work we do for free.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes there's a payday at the end of it, and that's wonderful. But a lot of times too,
not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed, and there's no payday associated with it. So when you break it down too, when they're like, oh, how much did you get paid? I mean, some deals, sure, maybe, I get lucky and I get paid like a lawyer's wage. Right. Yeah. And that's incredible. But then some, my hourly wages, essentially when I was working at McDonald's, I'm making the same amount because I spent a lot of time with these people. So it's tricky when kind of people bring that in terms of, like they just don't know exactly where all the pieces of the pie go when we end up getting paid. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's, I don't even know where on a tangent with that, but
I can tangent with the best of them. Okay. So another thing I really want to talk to you about today, because one time when we were chatting, you were telling me a little bit about your crypto endeavors, and I'm so fascinated by it. And I just think it's like this black hole that, people are kind of embarrassed to talk about because nobody's super well versed. I mean, obviously there's a few people, but for the mass gen pop, most of us are curious, but don't know like first steps. So like, first of all, how did you even get into it? And can you explain at a high level, like what some of the process might be for anybody listening that may want to buy their first little Bitcoin or Shibu or whatever?
Sure. So I have been very interested in cryptocurrency for a long time. And I feel like there was a lot of analysis paralysis. I waited on the sidelines for such a long time, kind of not really knowing when to buy in. And so it's like Bitcoin in itself, you have to almost go down this rabbit hole of information. It kind of sucks you in. There's so much to learn. I think the basis of it is this cryptocurrency, essentially, like if we compare it to our fiat money, which is, like your Canadian or American currency, I mean, that's specific to that country, right? So cryptocurrency is a way of exchange for the world. So for me personally, I think the thing that really attracted me to it was essentially the scarcity of it. Like right now, our government can dictate the value of our money fairly easily, right? Like we saw during COVID, obviously the government was giving stimulus checks and all this kind of stuff, right? Which is really beneficial for a lot of the people that were unable to work. But it devalues our currency because it's not scarce at all. Like,
and
you
now we're
add as much in. Sorry?
And now we're kind of feeling the pains of that though, right?
Exactly. And now we're in this like near hyperinflation situation, right? So for me, I think the scarcity is kind of what drew me in. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin mined. And so for me personally, like how I learned about it was going through, there's so many podcasts out there. And one I actually really like is called Coin Stories. The host goes through, and I love it because she kind of talks about with her guests who are very, very high level, like really into Bitcoin. These guests she goes through, their upbringing until now and how they got into Bitcoin. And I just find all the stories super fascinating. So that's a really good one. And then obviously, the podcast is about Bitcoin as well. So I feel like, and the Bitcoin Standard, that's a really good book. It's a little dry, but you know what? Get through it. You'll certainly learn a lot. But I just think, for anybody interested in investing in cryptocurrency, I would start there and learn as much as you can. It's tricky too, because I feel like, in a bear market, people don't want to be like, yeah, I invest in crypto because like, right now, the price is down quite a bit. I think it was, 23,000 last time I checked, right? Per Bitcoin. I mean, when you think about it in terms of relativity and like had you invested even back in, 2011, you would still be way up from then. So that's great. Right. But I think too, in a bull market, everybody wants to talk about Bitcoin. And in a bear market, everybody's a little bit like, it's kind of wait and see how this works. But I think at the end of the day, you have to understand that it is a volatile asset, but the adoption rate of Bitcoin has been far quicker than even the adoption rate of the internet. And then I look at
fascinating.
Yeah, it's wild. And I look at like Gen Z, right? I'm like, some of these kids in this, generation following ours are earning more money through the internet nowadays that we could even like,
oh my gosh, I know,
even imagine. So for my thought process is that like, that is the way that the world is going. Also, you think about places like even Ukraine, right? If you were to have to flee Ukraine, what could you bring with you? Right? You think about all these war-torn countries. And if you had to, leave Russia in the 90s or whatever that looked like, what could you bring with you? What you could essentially carry? You couldn't transfer all of your money out of the country.
And it's so easy to close down something that's regulated and managed too by,
And now like Bitcoin would be your safe haven for that. Right.
As long as you could bring your codes and stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
For your wallet, your digital wallet, and you had your passwords and everything.
So. Exactly. Right. So all of that stuff you want to keep safe. And I honestly, for me, I still feel like I have so much to learn. I started investing, just through Coinbase, which I know the fees are a little bit high, but that's a great place to start. If you're just kind of wanting to get in, and now's a great time because prices significantly low than it was last year at the all-time high of like $64,000 or something like that. So
crazy.
If you're interested now and in the next little while, I think is a great time to dollar cost average in, which kind of means like buying a small amount, every day, every week, whatever that looks like is feasible for you. It doesn't mean you need to go and buy $1,000 worth at a time kind of thing. But you can do that. And it's a great time to kind of, spend a little bit at a time to collect your Satoshis and go from there. Maybe one day you'll have one full Bitcoin.
One full Bitcoin. I'm going to be Googling Satoshi.
Google. You can Google Satoshi? Stack and Sats.
There we go. Woo, homework. Thank you for that.
I hope it helped.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And I do think, it does tie back into real estate, the whole idea of crypto. And there's lots of dialogue and in the States and more progressive places too, of where crypto is actually being used to not only buy stuff in the metaverse, but also physical assets here. And, I'll call it real world. So I'm really fascinated by it. So that was like helpful. And we'll link those two podcasts that you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I know that I'll be doing my homework later.
Good luck. It's a rabbit hole.
Oh gosh, I know. Everything is a big black hole. And luckily, as moms, we have so much free time, all the research. So
thankfully, as realtors, we're in our car a lot. So podcasts are your friend.
Yeah, that is true. That's one benefit of our office being our vehicles.
So true.
So that kind of is a good parlay into, in your opinion, what do you think is going to be the biggest disruptor in the next 5-10 years? Obviously, we've been seeing stuff happen way faster than that. Even if we just take Instagram versus TikTok, for instance, or YouTube now has the short videos as well as the long videos. So things are actually moving way faster, but let's pretend it would actually take, 5-ish years for something radical to change. What do you think that could be? And it could be totally out of the box that we've not talked about or touched on, but yeah.
So, what, it's hard because I feel like anybody should kind of be always thinking like, can my job be automated? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Great
it's something
point.
that, it's something that I've thought of too, because can real estate advisors, can our positions become automated? And it's one of those things that I guess leaves us trying to always prove our value and make sure that we are, essential for our clients. And, the more I think about that, I always come back to the fact that it is one of the most expensive assets you'll ever own.
Yeah.
And is that something that you would likely leave to, I don't want to say in the hands of a robot.
I was going to say a robot, computer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would leave to, an automated process? And when I think about that, I think about how there's such a personal aspect to our jobs and to dealing with people. And not only that, but
you can't call up the robot in the middle of the night or text them first thing in the morning, which not that ever happens, but
of course. But they can't, they can't give you the pros and cons, right? Like real estate is every situation has a pro and a con, and you have to determine which is going to be, the best move, because there could be a lot of pros on each side too. Yeah. Right. And it's always kind of a mind game. Like I say to my clients too, like we want to hold our cards close as if it's a poker game, right?
Yeah,
because there's always a lot of bluffing going on. Right. And I think there's so many personal aspects of that I don't know if real estate advisors will be replaced, if you will, even just honestly coming straight down to like, if you're a seller, do you want unguided strangers through your home? I mean, I know point. I personally would feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that as a realtor, there's a lot of rules and regulations in place to ensure that you are doing right by everybody, protecting people's assets, all that kind of stuff. But just that also too, like, it's just the advice piece, there's so many times
a trusted advisor, if you will. Right?
Absolutely. There's so many times I work with clients where, they say they want one thing, and then that kind of slowly evolves through the transaction, and it kind of ends up in something a little bit different. And then sometimes I need to remind them too of something that was, really important to them. And we kind of go back to that as well. Yeah. So I think I don't see it changing with that regard, but I do feel like now, if you are a real estate advisor, I use that word interchangeably with agent, if you will. Yeah. But if you are a real estate advisor, I feel like you have to be on video. Like that's a non-negotiable. That needs to be something you're doing. I know. It's tough too, because to be honest, I'm not the most consistent person with social media either, and video and all that kind of stuff. Like it's all something we're all kind of working at and working to be better at. But I think that is something that people are expecting of you, right? Like, to be honest, even with the pandemic,
Oh
everything that
gosh.
happened. I know right before the pandemic, I had started doing virtual tours, but come pandemic time, I mean, if you didn't have a virtual tour, right, you were dead in the water. I mean, I can't tell you how many houses I sold sight unseen last year where the buyers hadn't even been in the house. They'd never stepped
That is
foot in
so
the house.
wild. Don't you find that wild?
Wild.
Because going back to something you said earlier, this is the largest transaction most people make, and they haven't even looked at it in real life.
Yeah. And they trust a
Crazy.
virtual tour
Mhm.
and, or, you know, me with my iPhone, is, you know, the best guide. Right. And I
Yeah.
think that's another aspect with the person to person contact too, is that I'm going there looking for the smallest tiny details to point out to them as well, if they're in a situation where they're buying without having been able to preview the house first in person. So I do think that, you know, technology is just going to continue to advance. Like I've spoken with many realtors where, you know, they used to carry around a pocket full of dimes and nickels to go around and make their phone at the payphone, and they'd get this book delivered to their office every day or maybe every week with the listing.
Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. No, thank you.
I feel like we've got it so easy, right? We have the system set up on our phone. We just send a showing request, and then we access them using facial recognition to access a lockbox. Like already things have come so far. Like when I first started, we didn't have that app for the lockbox.
That's in 7 years.
That's just 7 years.
Wow.
Actually, I was opening a lockbox the other day, and this must have been a while back now because I was wearing a mask and I had to take my mask down, and I was like, oh, sorry. And I said, it's got to scan my face to let us in. And the client was like, oh, kind of like laughed. Yeah. And then after I was like, oh no, like it's the app, and it, you know, scans your face just like opening your phone.
They didn't believe you.
No, we thought I was joking.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, no, I'm being serious.
Wow.
Like that's how we access the lock boxes, right? Which should also help you feel a little bit more secure too about these lock boxes.
It's 100%.
As soon as somebody accesses it now and has the keys to your house, the other agent gets a notification like, here's who's showing your house, right?
Yeah, there's an audit functionality, which is great. Peace of mind.
Yeah. So like, I'm super excited to see where the technology goes with the real estate industry, even in the next 5 years. Cause like I said, that's where we've come just in the last 7, right? Oh, sorry. I shouldn't say the payphone to now was the last 7,
but the facial recognition on the app.
Facial recognition is new. But yeah, so I wish I had the crystal ball to know exactly. I'd certainly be buying a lot more, investing more in real estate and lottery tickets if I did. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just as curious as the next one to see, I think, where it's going. I think, you know, video is obviously the next way. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with this metaverse, because I feel like virtual reality, what I'm thinking will be a next step is that you can put on your virtual reality goggles, your Oculus 2, and
it's a mouthful.
Tour around a house as if you're in person. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, like merging real life and the metaverse into one.
Totally.
Oh, I love that.
And I think it's got to happen. Right? I saw so where was it? They had those glasses, those like virtual reality glasses, and you just put them on. I think it's a little less cumbersome than the Oculus. But like that, if you could put on a pair of glasses and then look through a house, even just to know if I want to go see that house in person or if it's off the list.
Oh my gosh, think of the time that would save everyone.
Yeah.
All right, start building that, Dawn. Let's go.
I'm on it.
I love it. We only have a few more minutes, but this has been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge and your humor with us. It's been awesome. If people want to find out more about you or check out your YouTube, where can they go?
Yeah. So my YouTube channel, you can just look up Dawn 𝙬𝙬 Calgary Realtor.
Spell Maser.
Maser, M-A-S, like Sam, E-R.
Perfect.
Or you can find me on Instagram at Realtor Dawn YYC.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll be chatting again very soon.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Dawn. Bye.
Okay. Bye.